I've been doing some thinking, okay, and I've come to the conclusion that I am profitable and you're a loser. That might come across as harsh, but a lot of people need to hear it and it has to be said, right? In this video, that is exactly what we're going to be talking about. And if you didn't already, if you can already tell by this video, I have no script, I don't have any notes, I don't have anything prepared. What you're going to get in this video is the raw, real reality of exactly what you need to hear and what you need to do in order to improve, right? But before we get into that, you need to understand a little bit more about me, where I was, what I did, and where I am now. So it all started about 8 years ago. I've been trading for nearly 8 years at this point, and it all started in my parents' house in a small town in Denmark. Right? And a lot of you out there might sit there and think that I am different than you guys, right? I'm in no shape or form different. My father is a construction worker, right? Worker, he's not a business owner in construction. My mother is a nurse, right? So I come from a very middle class family, which again in itself is a privilege, but I haven't gotten any handouts or anything of that, of that sense, right? So in that shape, in that sense, I'm exactly like all of you out there. I imagine that a lot of you come from a similar family to mine, and so that's why this can relate to exactly you, okay? Now, ever since then, I became obsessed with trading at a very young age, right? About 8 years ago. And at that time, all these influencers that are around now simply were not around. And so the information that you guys have access to on a daily basis, I did not have. I'm not saying, I started trading in the 80s, but still, trading has become, a much more popular industry over these last, I would say, 4 years or so. And so when I started, it was, pretty difficult to find actual information that was of any use, right? Of course, we all knew about support and resistance and all these very, very basic foundations, right? But ICT and all these new fancy concepts simply weren't a thing when I first started. At least I didn't know of them. And so it took endless of losses, about 3 years of, money leaving my bank account almost every single day. I had a completely normal job. I was a waiter for 4 years and I worked in 3 different restaurants. Before that, I was working in a butcher shop, right? So I had a completely normal job, and what was funding my trading account wasn't my parents. It wasn't a trust fund. It was my own salary, right? So about 80% of my salary, I deposited it into my trading account on a monthly basis, and 100 times out of 100 times, I blew that money over and over again, right? Now, again, I was willing to take that risk because I was living in my parents' house. I didn't really have any responsibilities. I didn't have any bills. I didn't have any expenses. And so me losing 80% of my salary, really didn't mean much. And when I look back at it, it was probably a pretty good idea because it taught me a lot about losses. And nowadays, where I have a lot more money, it has also taught me that money at the end of the day is extremely important. It's extremely valuable. And, it's not something to be thrown around left, right, and center, right? And so I went through that to get to where I am today. And there's a saying I always tell people: you have to go through it to get through it, right? And that's trading within itself. There's no cutting corners here. Right? You can get the best mentor in the world. I would like to consider myself a person that is extremely talented when it comes from to taking people from knowing nothing to doing this full time. I'll consider myself a very talented person in that area, but I still can't make people cut corners, right? So I can't grab someone by the neck and carry him to the finish line. No, he has to get there by himself, and he has to go through what I've gone through, right? In other words, you have to go through it to get through it, right? Eventually, I managed to find profitability, but I want to talk about what the difference between me and you are, because surface level, there's no difference, right? You might have had a worse childhood than whatever, right? You might have, there's always somebody who's done, has gone through worse than you, right? And I'm in no shape or form saying that I've gone through anything terrible, right? But it's not an excuse if I had, okay? And so that's the first thing you guys have to understand. I see way too many people that try to blame their situation instead of just taking control and working with the cards that you were dealt, right? Because I see a lot of people that say, oh, I'm not successful because I have to take care of this, or I can't do that because I have to work. Like, that's all nonsense, right? We have examples of people going from probably very, very hard to beat in terms of having a shit situation, right? Still coming out on top as literal billionaires, right? And so if you're like me, you look at these people and you say, okay, well, if he's done it, well, then I can do the same, right? And that's probably the first thing that separates me from a lot of people out there. I'm able to look at people and say, okay, if this guy can do it, then so can I, because he's no different than me, right? Because I know this for a fact. Intelligence is not going to get you very far when it comes to business. Academically, yeah, intelligence is probably going to take you far up the ladder, but, well, maybe not even the ladder, because even in the corporate world, right, the way that you climb that ladder is social gatherings and basically, possessing these business skills, right? That's the only way you're going to make partner and all these different things, right? And so that's the first thing that you guys have to understand. You are no different than anyone else. And so your situation might be worse, but I can guarantee you that there's someone out there in the world that has had it 10 times worse than you and still came out on top 10 times better than you. And so it's no excuse where you came from, what you're doing, or what you have to do. Right? That's the first thing you guys have to understand. Secondly, what's incredibly important, right, is that you understand how long this is actually going to take. Right? Because people on social media have pretty much created this false facade of what it actually means to be a trader and how long it's going to take to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve. Right? And so if people have tried and tried and tried for a year and a half or 2 years, well, then they're going to give up if they haven't gotten the results within 2 years. Right? And that's because they've been fooled to believe that that is the way to go. They've been fooled to believe that you're supposed to, have all this stuff figured out within your first 6 months. And that's just not the case. If I were to tell you, how long do you think it takes to become a doctor, for example, right? It'll probably take you 10 years, right? Maybe not like an entry-level doctor, but an intermediate doctor, you're probably going to have to study for 10 years, right? And so if you on year 6 know that it's going to take 3 years, are you going to 4 more years? Are you going to say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to quit, right? This took way longer than expected. No, because that's just simply what you have to go through. Right? That there's no in between. You can't cut corners academically, and neither can you in this industry. Right? And so you know that, okay, it takes 10 years to become a doctor. I'm either going to, deny that or accept that. If I deny it, then don't even pursue it. Right? But if you start pursuing it, well, then that, in my eyes, means you've accepted it. Right? And then there's no in between. There's no quitting here. Right? And that's what you have to understand about trading. I think the average time it takes for someone to turn profitable is 3 years. But that is if that person does the right thing over and over again. I've worked with people that have traded for 10, 12, 15 years and still not found profitability. And why is that? Is that because they are fundamentally just more stupid than other people? No, the reason why these people remain unprofitable is because they refuse to learn from their mistakes, right? And so what you guys have to understand here is these guys are not only going to fail in this industry, they're going to fail in any industry that they decide to pursue because they get feedback from their losses, for example, and they don't apply the feedback given. Right? So they're essentially taking losses for no reason whatsoever. And no matter what business you decide to pursue, and I've been in multiple and I've done, very well in multiple different industries, you're going to face the exact same problems. You're going to have a problem, you're going to have errors, you're going to have flaws, and you're going to get feedback that tells you exactly what to do in order to fix those. And if you keep ignoring them, well, then again, your business is just going to come down, right? And the same exact thing can be said in trading. So that is also one of the things that separates, for example, someone like me from a lot of people out there. You refuse to learn from your losses because your ego is in the way, right? We all have an ego. That's impossible not to have as a person. The difference is I don't let mine control me, right? And it's not something you're born with or you're not. No, it's something that's developed. It's something that's learned. Right, so you have to teach yourself to pretty much put your ego to the side whenever you're in the office. Right, the problem is whenever people take losses or whenever they're told that they're doing something wrong, they don't want to believe it because they fundamentally don't want to be wrong. Right, and so it is exactly that which you have to switch. Right, there's a book called The Best Loser Wins, and I have never heard a more accurate statement in probably my entire career. Right, I've also never seen an industry where this applies better. But you can quite literally apply that, in life as a whole. The best loser wins because everyone who's trying to achieve something extraordinary is going to have to go through losses. And that's also something you have to understand, right? You might sit there and say, oh, well, I'll just start an e-commerce store, right? Or I'll start, a graphic design agency. But the problem is that's going to be no different. You're also going to take losses there, right? They might not be trading losses in that sense, but you're still going to take losses if you want to come out on top, because all we can do is act on the information that we're given, right? And where do we get information from as a trader? We don't have a business partner that's telling us what we're doing wrong, right? So what tells us what we're doing wrong and what gives us the information that we need in order to improve is our losses. But if your ego is so big that it won't allow you to learn from your mistakes, well, then there's simply no hope for you. Right? And so that's the first thing you guys have to focus on. And also what I have to focus on, right? I sit here and talk as if I'm this big guy, but I've been in your exact situation, right? And as we established in the beginning of this video, fundamentally, there's no difference between you and me. I've got no handouts, right? And now I'm sitting in my dream house, right? And so if I did it, then you can do it, right? And that's the mindset you have to develop. because that's the mindset of a winner, not only in trading, but in life. Right? If you look at someone and say, oh, but he's an exception. Oh, but he probably had some help. Or, oh, but, he was born here and I'm born here. So that's why he can do this and why I can't. Right? If you live your life that way, well, then you're simply going to live a very sad life and you're never going to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Right? And what you guys have to understand is that trading is not like any other business, okay? It is not like any other business because trading forces you to rewire your brain and it forces you to go against human nature. Your brain, whenever you take a loss, immediately views that as danger, right? And biology has taught you to avoid danger, right? That's what your brain is telling you. Whenever you take a loss, it signals that, this is danger. We're going to have to try and avoid this as much as possible, right? If you were out in the wild and you saw a tiger, you get an adrenaline rush because your body wants you to be able to perform, at its peak so that you can outrun this tiger potentially, right? In other words, you develop adrenaline so that you can outrun the danger, right? The body is all built up around being able to avoid danger as much as possible. Right? And you have to rewire that entire thing because when you are told that you're wrong, it brings up all these past traumas without you knowing subconsciously, right? And your brain thinks you're doing something wrong, right? Your brain thinks it's being proven wrong whenever you take a loss. And so what it does is it turns losses into a negative and it never allows you to improve upon whatever caused you to lose that trade because it's turned it into something that it's trying to avoid. Right? And you have to rewire that entire script and turn that negative into a positive. Because losses are indeed positive, whether you believe it or not. As we already established, we need information in order to improve, and the way that we get access to that information is through our losses. Right? So imagine it like this. Every single time you take a loss in trading, you're handed a book, or you're handed a 5-page PDF file that explains exactly what you did wrong and what you need to improve upon later. That's what you get every time you take a loss. Now, whether you choose to read that PDF file is up to you. Right, so you can either read the PDF file, right, and improve upon whatever it told you that you did wrong, or you can just ignore it and move on. Right? The first option is how you turn a loss into a positive. The second option is how you remain the exact same for years on end. Right? And this is also a big part of social media because everyone markets trading as if it's the greatest business on earth because we have no expenses. Right? We don't have to pay for shipping, we don't have to pay employees, we don't have to do anything. Right? But that's not true because losses are inevitable. Why? Because we're trading a game based on probabilities. Right? And you can't argue that because if we weren't trading based on probabilities, then we would be trading based on certainties. And we're certainly not trading based on certainties, right? So it is a game of probabilities. And when you're trading something that's based on probabilities, well, then losses are inevitably a part of that probability. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a probability, right? So losses are inevitable. And you are the only person that gets to decide whether this is going to be a positive or this is going to be a negative, right? The problem is most people, me included, are out there thinking that it's the environment around them that causes them to consistently lose. They think it's, oh, this person's strategy didn't work and this guy was wrong about what he said. And so that's why I've been losing for the last 6 months. But no, there's one person to blame here and that's you. Right? And that's also why it's so dangerous to take so much advice from people out there online because what you end up doing is subconsciously blaming the person that told you to do what you just did. So instead of blaming yourself and taking accountability for the loss that you've just taken, you now put that onto someone else. Right? And that's a big issue. So a tip out there for a lot of you guys is to pick one or two influencers, if you will, that have a very similar market outlook and a very similar approach to this, industry as a whole. And then you listen to those two people only, because there's a big problem or a big problem occurs whenever you listen to 10, 15, 20 different people at the same time, because these people all believe, different things about the market and they could all be correct individually, right? But once you start mixing all these opinions and this, that, and the other, well, then you turn something that was originally correct into a negative, right? And so what you have to do to combat that is simply choose one or two people that you decide to listen to. Don't be on Twitter too much. Don't follow all these people on TikTok because they're inevitably going to force you to make mistakes. And I am a victim of exactly that. Right? So every single time I had a losing day, I would hop on Twitter. I would see somebody who just made $50,000 and I would think to myself, well, what the hell am I doing wrong? Right? And that will cause me to overtrade because now I've just seen this guy who made a load of money and now I want it even more. Right? So now I'm going to go onto the market because I'm going to prove to myself that I'm just as good as this guy, right? And that turns out to liquidate my entire account. Right? And that could have all been avoided if I didn't compare myself to random people online who's probably lying anyway. right? And so I can sit here and tell you with full confidence that I would say 90% of the people you see on social media are straight up lying to you. Everything can be faked. MetaTrader screenshots, right? Ninja Trader screenshot, whatever it is that they're trading on, all of it can be faked, right? And I know that because I've seen it so many times. And I have been approached by a handful of exchanges of brokers and all that stuff that have told me, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a streamer account where we're basically going to fund your account with $1 million, make it look real. And so then you can show your audience that you are trading with $1 million and they can't deny it because it looks like a real account. Right. And so these are the offers that if I'm getting them, well, then certainly all the other big guys, well, they're getting them, right, times 10. And so what you see online, regardless of how much proof they show you, is 9 times out of 10 going to be fake. And I'll explain exactly why that is. If you have someone who is publicly saying, hey, listen, this is the exact strategy that I'm trading, right? And if you want this, then you just have to follow what I do. That's just inaccurate. And I'll tell you why. There's something in this industry called alpha decay, right? And it's basically a study that's been done on certain trading strategy before they went public and after they went public, right? So the one that I remember is this one strategy that had an annual return of 10% in, I believe, 1992. And after it was used for academic purposes, so in other words, it got published, well, then that win rate or return dropped from 10% a year down to 2% a year. So it became 80% less profitable after it went public. All right, so every single time you watch all these gurus online trade and show you their entire system, well, then again, they're probably not trading it themselves, or at the very least, they're not profitable, right? And you might sit there and say, well, what about ICT? Well, funny enough, not too long ago, I can't remember where I found this study, but there was a guy did a study on ICT fair value gaps specifically, right? And what he came to the conclusion that prior to 2021, which was ICT's blow up year, his fair value gaps worked more times than they didn't. After 2021, where he had publicly exposed all these strategies that he was trading, well, then it was now failing more than it was winning. Moral of the story here is don't listen to everyone online, because 99% of the time, all they want to do is drain you from money. Their entire lifestyle, right, is funded by you guys. That's why they have to maintain this status symbol, right? They have to show you all these cars. They have to do all these things because their lifestyle it pays for their lifestyle, literally, right? And so their trading is not what's funding their lifestyle. It's you. And that's what you guys have to understand. And that's also something that nowadays separates me from you. I don't go online. I don't compare myself to anyone. I don't care what everyone else is doing. I don't care how much money this guy made. I don't care how much money this guy lost, because it has no significance, in terms of my trading. It does nothing for me, right? If anything, it's going to do something negative. It's certainly not going to give me anything positive, right? And I'm not saying you can't watch a most motivational video here and there. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying on a daily basis, don't feed yourself with all the nonsense that's out there online, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to do more harm than it's, going to do good. Now, you're probably out there wondering why I, in the beginning of this video, called you a loser. There's one reason why I called you a loser in the beginning of this video, and I'm going to explain it now. I just need some nicotine here. So the reason why is because I know you've told yourself, I'm going to do this, right? You know exactly what you need to do. 90% of you guys watching this video, and I know this because I've worked with thousands of people, they all know what to do. They just don't know how to do it, right? Or maybe they even know how to do it. They're just not doing it, right? And so that is why you are most likely a loser, because you keep telling yourself that you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then you don't do it. Right? And that is what losers do, right? So you tell yourself, I'm not going to overtrade this week. I'm only going to place 5 trades, and then you end up placing 10. That's what a loser does, right? That's the easiest way to ensure that you don't trust yourself. And you might not notice it, but the more you break these promises to yourself, the less you're going to trust yourself and the less you're going to be able to achieve, right? So you are just, every time you do this, you become more and more, of a loser, right? And so the bottom line here is simple. The only difference between me and you is the fact that I didn't quit and I stuck to exactly what I said I was going to do. That's what separates me and you, right? I said, and of course, this didn't happen overnight, right? I've been in your shoes. I've been a loser before, where I told myself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then I didn't do it. Why? Because my psychology just wasn't there for it, right? I was more focused on looking cool. I was more focused on trying to prove myself right instead of just doing what I knew I needed to do, right? And so that is fundamentally what separates me from you. There's nothing else that separates me from you, right? I started in this same position that you started in, right? The outcome might have just been a little different, right? But you're not done yet. At least if you quit, that's one way to ensure that you remain a loser for your entire life, right? I heard this quote here from Max Holloway. If you quit, right, well, then you're a certified loser. But if you continue yet fail, right, then you're at least a winner in your book. And that's all that matters, right? So I'm sitting here calling you a loser for motivational reasons, and because what you're doing right now is quite literally what a loser does. You can compare it to someone who every day wakes up and tells himself, today's the day where I'm going to, go into the gym. And what he ends up doing is stay on the couch like a slob, like he does every day, and eat his salt and vinegar chips. That is a certified loser because he keeps telling himself that he's going to do something and he does the opposite. And that's you. And I know that's you because otherwise your situation would look significantly different. And it doesn't. Right? And the only one who's in control of that, the only one who can change that is yourself. Now, of course, a person like me can guide you and help you in the right direction and this, that, and the other. But as I said in the beginning of this video, I cannot pick you up and throw you across the finish line. Right? You have to want it yourself. And once you get to that stage, well, then you're very, very close. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was all I have for you in this video. And the reasons that's, the things that separate me from you, or a profitable trader from someone who's not profitable. It's simply a matter of doing what you know you have to do and doing exactly what you tell yourself you are going to do, right? Once you can do that on a consistent basis, not only will you start to make money from trading, being able to pull money out of your computer screen, almost literally, right? But every other department of your life will, simultaneously improve, right? Because you're going to start to trust yourself a lot more, which means you're going to be able to achieve a lot more things, right? You're going to have so much more confidence in yourself. And you might, sit there and say to me that I am talking nonsense, but I know this, okay? I've fought internationally. I've fought on stage or in the ring internationally, right? I've competed on stage in a world championship, right? In crypto trading. So I've done all these crazy things. But 5 years ago, do you think I was able to do that? Absolutely not, right? Because it comes with experience and it comes with, doing the same thing over and over again. So it's not just one time sticking to what you're saying. It's all those reps that you do, right? So I say to myself, today I'm going to go to the gym. Then I go to the gym. That's one rep. I say to myself, I'm going to trade one time today. Whether that's a win, loser, or a break even, I'm going to do it one time. And if I do that, well, then that's another rep, right? And it's the compound of all that, right? It's the compounding effect. Eventually, it's going to turn into something great. And so that is the only thing that separates someone like me from someone like you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this video. Again, if I, went kind of sideways here and talked about a bunch of different things, you'll have to excuse me. Again, I'm not following a script. There's no notes. There's no nothing. It's just me telling you exactly what I think you need to hear. So again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.